I received a call a few years ago from Bill Rausch at OSF when he had just come on as artistic director, and he asked me if I wanted to adapt Don Quixote de la Mancha by Cervantes, and I leapt at the opportunity. It just seemed like something I really might have an affinity for. I hadn't read the novel at the time, but I'd been to Spain, and I was eager to read the novel. I had it on my shelf, and my wife had read it and told me, "You got to read this." So I did. I read it. It took a couple months. I said, I'm not writing a word. I'm not going to go anywhere until I just read this novel first once, just to enjoy it, and then find another adaptation later, another translation rather, and then get a sense of what the play would be based on what I read. I tried reading it in Spanish, but I just had no affinity for reading in Spanish at all. I'm just not that fast, so I stuck mainly with the English translations. The first translation I read was by Sir Tobias Smollett, who translated it in England around 1775, and then the most recent one I read was an adaptation by Edith Grossman. Mainly taking notes from the events of the novel, but not really writing specific lines down. I didn't want to. I wanted to be careful not to plagiarize, not to take something directly from another writer. Even though I am adapting another writer in Cervantes, I was more interested in sort of finding my own voice in that. So that's where I began. I started just making a list of the events, what happens, what's important about it, and then I started sort of arranging them in an order that, more or less the order that they happen in the book, and trying to figure out which ones are the ones that I can do and which are the ones that I'm just going to have to let pass. Yeah, I had to cut a number of characters. I had to cut a number of events out. Some events are conflated into one. Some characters are. Very few of them really are actually conflated into single characters. The chief characters of the novel are all there, so people will get a sense of the sweep of the novel at the same time that they'll also feel like this is its own legitimate play, with its own arc. Yeah, I wanted something that would match the kind of works that are found that people see at the Elizabethan and here at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, because they come to see Shakespeare, and so I think there's an expectation that they want to hear elevated language at the same time that they want to hear new writing, the new voices, and I guess I represent that. Also, I know there's going to be a lot of young people at the Elizabethan. I know the audience that attend these productions, and as well as older people as well. And I want to make the work accessible to them, which was easy to do because Cervantes was really writing in very accessible language. It's a really accessible novel. But I wanted to create my own sort of way around between all these parameters, between the beautiful text of Shakespeare, elevated poetry of Shakespeare, and the low, rustic, peasant vernacular. I do want to add that essentially this play is both a comedy and a romance. It'll have rising passions among the characters, especially Don Quixote, who's madly in love with an image, with a woman he's never really met. But it's going to be funny. I hope it's funny. I think I'm conceiving this as a kind of comedy, not only in the modern sense of the word, that it's risible and there's a lot of humor in it, but formal comedy in the sense that it's about human characters really dealing with their own frailties and trying to make the best of it in a world that can sometimes seem oppressive. It can sometimes seem brutal and all too real, and yet there's a guiding spirit of fortune and grace that prevents anyone from really truly being hurt.
I believe too that it's ultimately one is quite moved, uh, empathizing with Don Quixote, having really gotten to be friends with him somehow, just so close to him that it's like, some of the pathos of the Charlie Chaplin or one of the silent film stars. Although, there's great depth in the subject matter, and there's great humor. There's this great, wonderful, moving quality about them.
As much as Don Quixote sometimes falls flat on his face or gets beaten up for all his efforts, for all his altruism, he never gives up.